Hi everyone, this is Sumit from FableCare. I have extremely esteemed guests with me today, Dr. Nankumar Jairam, Mr. Arvind, and Dr. Manish from Fortis Hospital, and Mr. Arvind from Apollo Hospitals. Thank you for joining today's session. I'm pretty sure that this will be a great interactive session today, where we are going to discuss some fantastic topics. So before I kind of start, let me just quickly give a quick context of why we have started this particular conference. This is not the first, I mean, this is the first conference of a series of conferences that we will be doing in the coming days. So, Reimagine Healthcare was something that we were thinking about. Last year's pandemic has changed and taken everyone by surprise. I think it was not just the patients, but also doctors, hospitals. I think every institution was affected directly or indirectly by the pandemic. And at Fable, we have seen both good and bad side of the pandemic in the last 1.5 years. While the negative side is obvious to I think all of us somewhere or the other, we were personally impacted by COVID as well, whether ourselves or one of our near and dear ones. But we have also seen the good side of it, and the good side of it that at least at Fable Care that we see is that pandemic has pushed technology adoption both at the patient as well as the doctor's level. And there has been like an explosive growth in technology adoption in the last 1.5 years. A very small example about it is that patients may not even today know what Doloneurobion is for and what are the components of Doloneurobion. But I'm pretty confident if you ask people what is the Delta variant of COVID-19, a lot of people, even in tier two cities today, know what is the Delta variant of COVID-19 and what goes in the vaccine, whether an RNA vaccine or a live virus versus a non-live virus. I think people have been reading about it, and generally the awareness around healthcare has gone up. So we thought this is the right time to engage with the industry, some of the stalwarts in the industry in healthcare, and understand their perspective on what technology is being adopted in healthcare. What do they see are the relevant technology which is coming? How is it going to change the landscape in either OPD, primary, secondary, or tertiary care? And and that is the core objective of the of our conference, where we understand from some of the industry stalwarts. A lot of entrepreneurs they are there today on this particular session. They would want to understand what is the product that they should be making, how should they be approaching any hospitals which are there, part of our today's call, and what is the kind of relevant technology we can make for hospitals and the entire healthcare infrastructure. So that's why we started Reimagine Healthcare. This is a series of webinar. Today is the first webinar, and I'm pretty confident that we couldn't have started with a better or better panel today. So quick introduction about the panel, and then I'll request the panel to quickly make a quick introduction about themselves too. But we have a very esteemed panel, starting with Dr. Nandkumar Jairam, who was the past president and managing director of Columbia Asia Hospitals recently, which was in news because of various things, but also because of the news that they were acquired by Manipal Hospitals. We have Mr. Arvind, who is the CHIO at Apollo Hospitals. He has been spearheading a lot of technology innovation implementation at Apollo Hospitals. And I'm pretty confident that a lot of us can learn a lot from Mr. Arvind. Dr. Manish, uh, Dr. Manish and I have an interesting story. We met about 3 years ago. We did a pilot at Fortis Hospital, and I can tell you, not only is he an industry veteran and has a very good handle in managing and running hospitals, but I can tell you he's very very tech savvy, and he's always forward looking towards technology adoption in hospitals. So I'm pretty confident that we have set out a uh, very good panel for kickstarting our Reimagine Healthcare. Panelists, starting from Dr. Nandkumar, maybe we can have a quick introduction about you and anything that you have to talk about this particular conference today.
Well, I can say that I am the senior most. You can make out from the amount of hair that I have on my head. And I can also say that I am a person who has had 4 decades of surgical practice, which gives me the advantage of understanding the clinician's point of view from various aspects of healthcare. But it's been a fantastic journey, and technology is something that is dear to me, and I look forward to today's discussion.
Thank you so much, Doctor. Mr. Arvind, you can go next.
Thank you. Thank you, Sumit, for having us today. I'm a technologist by profession, by training, and I've spent close to about now 24 years with healthcare. Uh, how I stumbled into healthcare is possibly an act of chance, but over time, the realization of how we can make technology be more effective in every aspect of healthcare delivery, not limited to clinical only, because healthcare delivery, just as you said, in terms of people's knowledge on COVID 19, makes us understand that it spans the entire delivery system, and unless the entire delivery system is up to it, healthcare delivery is not going to be to the levels that each one of us expect. And thereby, what technology can do for that, I think that's been my experience so far.
Dr. Manish, please go next. Thank you.
Thank you, Sumit and Team Fable Care for giving me an opportunity to be here. Extremely delighted. I am an anesthetist by training, but a healthcare business manager because of my passion. I think I've been with Fortis for over a decade, and have seen different formats of business being run. But you're right. I think COVID has been a big trigger for many of the changes. Many of the green shoots that had been sown many years back actually got converged and pushed in a new direction because of COVID. And it will require a lot of collaboration and conversations like these for us to chart the path ahead for the next 4-5 years. I think the innovation that's happened in the last 10 years, the next 5 years are going to far exceed that innovation, that degree of innovation, because of what's happened in the last 2 years. So happy to be here as part of this conversation and happy to contribute, but at the same time learn as well. And thank you for those flattering words, Sumit. Really humbled.
Thank you so much, Dr. Manish. We have, incoming audience has already crossed 150. So good to know that a lot of people are actually joining and listening out to this particular conference. I'm pretty confident that this number will continuously keep shooting up. Dr. Manish, in line with that particular, thought process in terms of what the pandemic has brought in as a shift, anything that has, last 1 year, how has that panned out for you? How has the business changed dynamically for you and for Fortis?
Yeah, Sumit, I think very relevant question. As I said earlier, I think the ingredients are always there. In the last 5 years, if you see, the mobile penetration has increased by leaps and bounds. At 2022, we anticipate the mobile penetration to be anywhere between 850 to 900 million users, which will be the largest in the world. Data is cheap now, and a lot of healthcare startups have been mushrooming the last 4-5 years. So I think the ingredients were always there. But I think the pandemic just was the right trigger and the catalyst to kind of increase adoption. To my mind, that was the biggest change. Adoption by doctors and nurses largely, and by, of course, administrators like me and others as well. In the second stage, I think that was the biggest change we saw. As an example, I'll tell you, 2 years back, 2.5 years back, our digital outpatient number was 5% of our overall outpatient consults. That today is about 25-30%. At the peak of pandemic, it was 40%. While we may not go back to those 40% levels, but I still feel 25 to 30% is a big, big number. And that I'm sure, might vary here and there for different organizations, but largely that number is going to stay around 25-30% and probably increase further as we tweak the solutions a little bit. So to my mind, that's been a huge opportunity. And the way the doctors have embraced technology has been just fabulous. And I think that's been the key driver. And the fact that a lot of these good solutions were around the corner, which doctors, forcibly had to, or were pushed to use. So that I think has been the biggest change. The next change has been, I think, how organizations have been nimble-footed about toggling between COVID and non-COVID workload. And also creating ecosystem to support this kind of adoption. See, it's not just having a Microsoft Teams on your platform, but it's also about having the backend and the ecosystem to make that conversation with the patient meaningful and hassle-free. So it's how organization, whether it's the Bangalore cluster or Fortis, and I'm sure it's same for all hospitals across the board, how they have managed to create an ecosystem to make the adoption easy. Third has been, I think, the biggest shift for me as from a business perspective has been access. Today we get patients who consult our doctors from as far away as Srinagar, Guwahati, which was never a catchment area. And, so, half my relatives who are in Delhi today consult with doctors in Bangalore, in our hospitals. So that's been, I think, a big shift. And I think it's going to just explode from here on. So, the patients getting access to quality care from tier 2, tier 3 cities has been just amazing. The other shift that I've seen is focus on cost containment. While healthcare has had cost pressures for a while now, but I think pandemic has taught us what frugality really is. And COVID pricing pressures from regulatory authorities has not been easy, but hospitals have survived, and not just survived, they have thrived. So I think right from tech adoption to mindset change to being frugal to being resilient to improving access, I think COVID has been a game changer in some sense. So now is the opportunity for us to take these lessons forward, work together with techpreneurs, work together with established tech giants to see how we can make the seismic shift and address challenges beyond COVID now. In our country, the challenges are numerous. We have one of the lowest doctor to patient ratios in the world. I mean, our healthcare spend is among the lowest in the world. So how do we now use these lessons to address larger challenges, make healthcare available where it is not, in rural areas, and improve the quality of healthcare, improve accessibility in areas where healthcare is available, but quality continues to be an issue, access continues to be an issue, affordability continues to be an issue. So a lot of work will need to be done in the foreseeable future for us to take these lessons forward.
Thank you so much, Dr. Manish. For all the audience, you can post your questions on the chat, and we would take the questions in the Q&A portion of this particular conference. Coming to you, Mr. Arvind. So you have been, operating, and, Apollo has a lot of branches across the country. And one of the things that Dr. Manish also mentioned that you have now, a lot of times hospitals were made with the idea of catchment areas, right? But now with technology being there, catchment area definition is potentially changing. So how do you think Apollo hospitals, what are the major changes that you are seeing in terms of business that are happening because of the pandemic at Apollo Hospital?
I think one part the pandemic has taught us is if we use technology appropriately, creating capacity out of what earlier was a physical build that took many years can be easily handled. I wouldn't make it so simple as easily handled. Can be handled efficiently. And that means that reorganizing our business between the regular work and the virtual work, and considering all of that in terms of your typical work schedule for the person who is operating. And the person who's operating is not necessarily clinical. They can be all aspects of the value chain in the organization. So for us, it's about ensuring that how do we use our solutions to ensure that we are delivering the same quality of care. People come only when there is quality of care. People come when there is sustainability. And you got to build that. Accessibility, very important. Fine, you're accessible to me. But after accessibility, am I giving you what you want? That quality is fundamental. And let's not forget, why did people go travel physically for healthcare? Because they thought that a particular doctor or a hospital was good. And so word of mouth, and you kept telling, go to that doctor. So you didn't have a problem really traveling or waiting for hours in outpatient lobby on for seeing a doctor. And we've seen some very popular doctors, their OP running into the deep nights. So that means you're delivering quality, and you're delivering quality at something sustainable. So the models have changed so that we enforce that. That means the models have changed to bring in good levels of predictive algorithms, prescriptive algorithms. I won't necessarily call everything machine learning and AI, but it travels in that direction. It brings in disruptive technology of offering your solution in different modes, and mobility being the most popular mode here. It offers design so that the UI UX of the software actually translates to work process. That means it's a holy confluence of software and operational reality. It talks about resilience, and it talks about how it can be made available now, because when you are online, you have to have the same quality of the technical delivery and the same availability. You're not in person, so you don't have the luxury of writing in pen and paper. So how do you do all of that? So I think the models have changed significantly to put technology as part of the DNA of the organization. Earlier, technology was an innovation that we also did. Now we are doing on technology. So now no more talking technology, because everybody is talking technology. All business teams are talking technology because they are riding on technology. And technology started becoming that aspect of it. And that is something where you see a significant shift. Business models are changing, and thereby you're looking at the art of possible.
Very insightful, Mr. Arvind. Dr. Jairam, you have been for the longest period in this particular industry. I'm sure you have seen multitudes of such cycles in the past, right? What do you think the pandemic has really hastened, or impacted in negative impact because of something in the pandemic in terms of how businesses and hospitals operate, specifically hospitals operate in regards to giving the top quality healthcare to the patients who are coming to them? So what are the trends that you have seen which are likely to be here and stay here for good or bad or worse, whatever be the scenario?
Sure, Sumit. Actually, what I would say is that the pandemic has been good and bad, and this you brought out at the very beginning, and I agree to that. While one important area, as has already been alluded to, is the adoption of technology, I have a slightly different and tangential perspective to what the others have said. Technology should have been adopted much earlier in our healthcare system, and we are behind time already. Yes, the pandemic hastened some aspects of healthcare, adoption of technology in healthcare, but did not embrace every aspect, because those aspects, and I'll explain to you shortly, are not driven really by the pandemic, but by understanding of other efficiencies that technology will provide. Now, let me illustrate this. Telemedicine took a quantum leap because of the pandemic, and that is very clear. Is it here to stay? Most likely, not at the levels that it reached at the height of the pandemic, but the advantages of using this technology is now apparent, not only in the rural part of the country, but also in urban India, where waiting is avoided and there is definite advantage. There is another angle to this. The use of telemedicine has been specifically because people are also worried and afraid of the hospital environment, where they feel they are more exposed to COVID than in their own homes. So that is another, albeit smaller, area of, and the reasons for greater adoption of telemedicine and teleconsultation. But is that all in technology adoption? No. There are operations and parts of operations that can change processes based on technology. There is finances of a hospital that can be extremely process-driven, and this can add to several aspects. Revenues can be increased, fraud can be reduced, audits are easier, and data comes in massive amounts. and can be used for many, many, many purposes. We are still behind in this area. So my point really is that irrespective of COVID, we should have been here much earlier. I'm thankful that the COVID did wake a lot of people up to the use of technology, but I still see the need to put the foot on the pedal in many areas and for us to innovate, not in technology solutions, but in the adoption of technology and making it so easy for everybody that they would use it much, much more. I would add, from the example of Columbia Asia, where we introduced a paperless hospital 17 years back. And it was, you can imagine, absolutely virgin territory. But we managed. And I can tell you that success comes much easier if you start with a total technology solution, because then it's easy to adopt. So those are my 3 cents worth. And I'll end by saying the worry and fear that investments in technology are so high has also been a reason for its tardy introduction into the healthcare system. And this is far from the truth, especially today, when there are so many solutions that are not at all expensive and can be molded to suit the needs of the hospital. So if I may summarize, yes, the COVID had some impact, but no, COVID should not have been the impact. We should have started earlier. Whatever it may be, there are many more aspects of technology that needs adoption. And the faster we do it, the more efficient we will become.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nandakumar, for that. And I definitely concur with it. For example, even at Fable Care, we were at 100,000 patients last year in March. Today, we are 1 million plus patients. We were at 1,200 doctors last year, March. Today, we have crossed 7,000 doctors who are using actively Fable Care technology in their day-to-day clinical practice. So there we have ourselves seen a very large adoption. But double-clicking on some of the things that you mentioned, Dr. Jairam, and something that you also brought up in your conversation, that for about 17 years, you were, and a lot of peers in the industry also know that Columbia Asia was actually a bit more technology adoption advanced, right? So you adopted certain EMR technology way earlier than a lot of hospitals were even thinking about it. And in that sense, a lot of people have this question in our minds is, what is that recipe for success for Columbia Asia to be able to adopt, get their doctors and get the administrators to something that Dr. Manish also mentioned, came in later after the patient. How did you manage that recipe? What was that recipe and secret sauce at your end, which led to very large adoption of technology at Columbia Asia from probably since inception rather than later?
Sumit, it's no big deal to understand that, and it's not a secret, nor can I or anybody else in the organization take credit for it. It is simply the fact that we said we are a paperless organization. You want to join us? Learn it, use it. Otherwise, you can't be a part of the system. And we were also fortunate that both the managers and the doctors who joined us at that stage were quite proactive in accepting this. We had a section of people who were a little difficult in adopting it, and we found ways of helping them. And I'll give you some examples. I'm sure Manish and Arvind would agree that there are senior doctors who carry the largest practice. And they are the most difficult to accept technology. Now, what did we do? We said, okay, you don't want to use the system? We'll let you have a PA, a physician assistant, do whatever documentation for you. Now, what happens is that when they watch the PA do this, their mind gets inquisitive, they learn, and they say, what the heck? Why can't I start doing this? They see the advantage, and then there is adoption. So it is a question of look at it, feel it, and use it. Now, this has been the reason for our success. But I must say one thing. 17 years back, the electronics that were available for us where, if I could use a simile, like the ambassador car on the roads. It was slow, it was difficult to modify, and any changes took an enormous amount of time. So it was only in the recent past that we have technology that can mold and adapt itself rapidly to requirements. And that is a huge, huge advantage. And I see that much easier to adopt into a healthcare system than with the older ones. I hope I've answered your question.
No, thank you. You have definitely answered my question. I'm not sure if the panelists have more questions based on that. But coming to you, Mr. Arvind, you have a lot of experience in running multiple branches of Apollo across the country, Apollo being the largest hospital group in terms of number of hospitals that they have. Have you seen any specific challenges, as Dr. Jairam was also mentioning, that in his organization, it kind of flowed from top down, either you are in it or you are out of it, right? But have you seen any new, in the recent past, any new patient-centric engagement technologies that have worked well or adopted both by doctors as well as patients? And if they worked well, why do you think, what was that recipe because of which that they work well? If you can elucidate this with a few examples at Apollo, that would be great for the entire panel.
I think if I say there are no examples, then both Dr. Manish and Dr. Nandakumar will fall off the chair. So I won't put them into that spot. Right from the start of the pandemic, we consultations was a problem. So we had already our mobile app, we had virtual consultations running in our organization now for more than 10, 12 years. So it's not unique. So I won't call it an innovation from our side. But then necessity is the mother of invention. And the necessity brought the art of possible for everybody to come together. So we saw that the patients were accepting appointments. They were following the process of booking. We saw that doctors were also following the discipline of joining the appointment on time, because unlike the physical where you can excuse yourself for being a couple of minutes late, sometimes more than that, you're following a structure. And that regime started following, and then the entire operation started becoming virtual because physical travel was just banned. So there's no question of physical appointment. So that's one example. The second example of it is we started doing patient communication. Very common problem in any healthcare thing. What's going on with the patient? Can we get updates? Can we meet the doctor? You know, and you get into several aspects of difficulty because the family is anxious. And with COVID, it's even more, nobody can see because it's infection, you're not allowed. So we bought in a patient family communication app where the clinical people are able to put that information in, and that information goes back to the family. So the family is able to get it, and as appropriate and as possible, they get into a group video conversation. And when I say a group video conversation, fully understanding that in a family, you'll have 3 or 4 people inquisitive to know it. So we tell them, if you are available at this time, we are willing to address you and address your questions and all of that. And whether the primary treating doctor is answering or somebody in the care team is answering, you're being responsible by giving that information. So you're reducing that level of anxiety. Fully understanding that on this side of the healthcare delivery, we are stressed too. It's not like we were having time at our disposal and we were figuring out what to do with our time. And for much that we would like to be in that stage, we were not. But that doesn't mean that we don't understand the anxiety on the other side. So how do you bring? So we brought in the technology. So it quickly caught on. Did we have to go through some operational processes to bring this together so that, improper, immature updates are not given? At the same time, improper, immature questions, if at all. And I shouldn't call them improper, immature because they're coming from the patient family. If they're coming, that means they are worried about it. Calling it improper, immature is a classification, but it's not correct. It's there in their mind. They are worried about it. So we are asking, how is that answered responsibly by a person? These operational processes had to come in. So everybody gyrated together. And this happened so quickly. And then the additional intake of how they used AI driven algorithms to read chest X-rays and chest CTs so that they are able to catch it. They're able to catch even a small white speck in the black and white film that is there so that they don't miss anything. Catch the infection early, that means treatment options are much more than catching it later. Were they used to doing AI/ML? Were they sure of the degree of correctness? They worked through that process, and the necessity, the maturity of the solution, the eagerness to constructively participate operationally for the solution to ensure that barriers are removed. And the solution is reliable. Reliability, reliability, reliability. You just can't underscore that word because that's the only source by which the whole transaction is happening. So you can't take a so-called downtime as you would do. All this, I think, automatically brought in. And these were examples of what we could see happening in front of us and how quickly they could happen.
Thank you so much, Mr. Arvind. I think a lot of us are already taking ideas and notes out of it, because some of the things that you mentioned out of it is that, being able to bring down patient anxiety and the family stress level is definitely a key in the entire healthcare process, which gets disconnected in a non-physical environment, because in a physical environment, the family sometimes comes together. Even if the patient is going and doing an OPD alone with the doctor, at least the family is there for mental and physical support. It is a big thing because that touch point gets removed completely in a offline environment, and doing that is definitely an applause worthy effort from Apollo Hospital. And building on to that, Dr. Manish, with you, did you take any specific initiatives in the last 1 or 2 years which have worked really well with the patients, specific technology initiatives that have worked really well in Fortis hospitals? You're on mute, Dr. Manish.
My apologies. So, Sumit, I think a lot has been done, but I think a lot more needs to be done. But I'll tell you, our journey has started many years back, and we've been in the process of refining our initiatives. But some of the key ones I would say are, in the space of AI chatbots that we have introduced on our website. They've been extremely helpful for patients, directing them to the right doctor, especially as you said, physical interactions were limited and people were relying more on the online means to find who to connect with. Second has been a fully loaded app that we've introduced now a couple of months back. Thanks to COVID, it just accelerated the progress on that. And we've tried to give a complete end-to-end solution to our patients on that app, right from pre-hospitalization, OPD appointments, video consults, to, of course, post-hospitalization needs like pharmacy, lab investigations, or, something that, we discussed with Fable Care some time back, how do you keep our patients engaged with the doctors post-discharge as well. Third has been, of course, how do you improve the experience of patients on the existing solutions. We've introduced a completely automated patient complaint management system, that, addresses complaints at the click of a button. Earlier, our biggest complaint, and not just in Fortis, in other hospitals, I would assume, is that the nurse call bell waiting time, the response time of a nurse for the call bells, because for every other thing, the nurse would be called, which is so unproductive and inefficient. So we've introduced a completely automated system, which, helps connect the patient directly with the concerned department and not take out, productive time of the nurses. That's been done. We've introduced a queue management system. It's been on for a while, and we are trying to integrate that with our app. See, because one of the challenges that we are seeing, and one of the questions that you asked earlier to, I think, Dr. Jairam, was what's the recipe? The recipe is that how do we integrate all the systems into one? We have so many disparate systems working in the hospital, addressing each need of a patient, and that's working in silos. And suddenly introduce a new system, and the other systems are not talking to that system, the new system that you're introducing, unless you have something like what Columbia did magnificently, was to start off with a paperless hospital. But each hospital has a legacy system, And the other challenge that we are facing or have faced in the past is how, cookie cutter solutions are being implemented now. Something that works for Apollo may not work for Fortis. So the techpreneurs or the technologists have to understand that each hospital has a certain nuance, a certain legacy, a certain culture, different specialities for that matter, different business formats for that matter. So how do they customize their solutions to address those needs, right? The other thing that we are, trying to do is work more on e-pathology, e-radiology, e-ICUs, for example. There are some, startups that have done some impressive work as far as e-ICUs are concerned. And we are trying to see how do we collaborate with them to extend our services to parts of Karnataka, to parts of, hinterland where none of these services exist. So I think a lot is happening in that front. But I would say the next few years, we should spend, and as I said, as an ecosystem, not just as hospitals, we should spend on deliberating on how do we take these solutions further? How do we make the lives of doctors and nurses easier? Right now, I think technology has solved for access. Technology is working primarily towards patients and addressing their needs, which is great. But I think eventually doctors as healthcare givers, providers and all also need to be brought into that scheme of things. How do we make predictive analytics a reality? How do we make clinical decision-making easier for doctors? They may not be updated with what's happening in the world, in the US, for example, on a real-time basis. But some of those clinical insights, if they can be married to the EMRs that are happening or being implemented, I think would be a great service to patients, to the whole fraternity, and to the overall ecosystem at large.
Got it. Thank you so much, Dr. Manish, for that. I think a lot of big insights are coming out of this last question, because I think reliability, ability to make it the use case should fit different hospitals, because every hospital has their own unique perspective, need, and some legacy systems are existing. And even if you are looking to integrate with any of them, your system needs to be extremely reliable, as Mr. Arvind kind of mentioned, which needs to work at scale with the kind of reliability factors that are expected out of such systems. I think they become some of the key words for entrepreneurs to take forward as an insight. So double clicking on some of the implementation steps, Dr. Manish, as you mentioned that, administrators, nurses, doctors, they also need to ultimately adopt technology, even if it is brought in top down, as Dr. Nandakumar mentioned. But even if it is brought top down, what are the biggest challenges beyond just saying that we don't have time for this? Beyond that, what do you think are some of the bigger challenges from an administrator point of view that you see sometimes become a roadblock in adopting technology in a hospital environment?
I think very, very relevant point, and that's something that I've been struggling myself with, that how do we create win-win situations for these solutions to be adopted and scaled up inside hospitals. See, one of the biggest challenges I feel is that how do we tie these solutions to business needs? Sumit, are you there?
Yes, I'm there.
Sorry. So how do we tie in these solutions to business needs? I think that's the most critical aspect, because many of these times, it's very difficult to figure out how do we monetize these solutions, because, will it be reimbursed by the government, by the patient? And we don't want to load on the price of these patients onto patients, these solutions onto patients. It's not fair. So how do we create a, OPEX model or different business model so that these solutions pay for themselves over a period of time? I think that's challenge number one. And then that's more a business, a business problem to solve, but I think an important one to solve as well, because, nobody's in this for charity. The other aspect is a more clinical aspect and a more operational aspect. As I said, the biggest challenge that I see is that how do you integrate that with legacy systems, or how do you completely remove them, and how do you bring in a new system? And I think that's a lot to do with cultural change management, and so on and so forth. The third is that how do we integrate the existing allied systems? For example, if I were to implement a EMR today in my hospitals, how do I integrate the LIS, the pharmacy, the stores? How do I integrate all those systems and make it easier for people to implement? And fourth is, I think the most important is, how do you make clinicians see value for it? Because at the end of the day, I think that's the biggest amplifier or bottleneck I see in many of these solutions. As Dr. Nand Kumar also alluded to it, is that how do you create a win-win situation for them? I think the biggest win-win today is convenience, increasing their practice, using their time that will save on manual documentation and having a solution in place. How do they use it more productively in engaging with their patients, going out, catering, and increasing their practice base? And certainly have certain use cases created through pilots. And once they see the results for themselves, then they're more amenable to adopt these solutions much faster. And also, I think, how do we filter out the good solutions from the bad ones? Today, there are many solutions available in the market. So as an administrator, it's my responsibility to filter out and, pick up the most convenient ones and perhaps not the most economical ones. Most convenient ones, most value-adding ones to be piloted rather than going in for the cheapest one. Because once that experience of the clinical fraternity is bad, it's very difficult to rebound from that and implement another system. So I think as administrators, I think it's our responsibility to pick up solutions which can make a sea change in the way care is being delivered, can improve quality, figure out ways to monetize it. And once that is done, I'm sure the rest of it about conversing with doctors and other stakeholders, is easier to do. But once we have to be very sure that the solution is going to work for the doctors, make it more convenient for them, improve the quality of patient care. And I think the rest will follow.
Thank you so much, Dr. Manish, for that. Mr. Arvind, one quick question on building on what Dr. Manish just mentioned. So while there is a lot of filtration process that happens, evaluation happens of any external technology at a hospital level, and I'm pretty confident that as a CHIU, you have got, I'm sure in the last 2 decades, you have seen multiple such propositions being made to Apollo Hospital. Some you would have implemented, and Apollo Hospital, by the way, has been constantly in news about some or the other new technology adoption that has been done by the hospital. And I know that Apollo Hospital, for the largest period of time, which is also something that you mentioned earlier, was one of the early adopters of launching their own app. And the app also has a lot of features. It was one of the first apps from a hospital which already had a teleconsultation, a lab appointment, a pharmacy delivery, and multitudes of patient services loaded into it. So my question to you is that, while we have seen Apollo having a lot of technology adoption, I'm pretty confident that there are certain technologies which have churned out, meaning they have not stayed with you for whatever reason. And it'll be great for the panel to understand, why do you think some of these technologies get adopted but ultimately get churned out? And what are some of the biggest challenges in implementing, that you have seen why some of these technologies have ultimately churned out because of either, doctors or patients not adopting, but any light on that and any reason why you think some of these technologies have not seen the same kind of adoption as others?
Fit for purpose. That's really why something stays or something does not stay. So it's not about the how recent that technology is or how modern that technology is or how advanced that technology is. This is not about that at all. This is about fit for purpose. The other day I was traveling to Calcutta, and the taxis in Calcutta are still ambassador cars. Fit for purpose. Absolutely fit for. It's working well, and it's working good. And it's meeting the purpose for which it is there. And I think each technology has to be looked at that way. Second aspect why a technology stays and does not stay is whether it is being supported and whether there is talent to support it. If everything is being made to look like and experience as rocket science, it will not find scale. It may be advanced. Nobody's questioning how advanced it is, but you know what? People will just sidestep it saying, it's not for me. It's rocket science. I don't understand it. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying rocket science is good or bad. I'm probably not qualified, but it's definitely not fit for me. So the support model and the talent around it is another important. And what Dr. Manish alluded to, at some point in time, the economics is absolutely important. We want every technology. We want it to be supreme. We want the patient experience to be instantaneous, absolutely gratifying, and there should be no dip in quality. How much are you willing to pay for it? And then there's sudden silence in the room, and actually people leave the room. It costs money. At the same time, you are telling me, Arvind, are you going to load patient costs with all of this? It's not even a conversation. Who said yes to it? What is the method we are? So it has to be that you're finding, if you just come into the room saying my technology costs so much, and if you want my technology, you need to cough up so much. No, while you are right, again, you're not right for me. How are you willing to work an economic model? The economics is absolutely important. Cost is important. And India is a market where we are looking at low costs. India culturally goes for low cost, high quality. That's our traditional DNA. Low cost, high quality. So how do we ensure that technology is meeting this particular market, and those that are not there are not going to stay? No matter how supreme they are, no matter which business house is backing them, it doesn't matter. It is not fit for purpose, it will not stay. And that's really how we've seen so. So yes, we've started with technologies that have been done. And when I say technologies, many times they are what goes behind the solution. So we've had to upgrade or change technology stacks because we've gone to a mode where it's not sustainable. Yes, we've done that a lot of times, and we've had good experiences and definitely bad experiences with such like technologies. And sometimes we bet on a certain type of a technology thinking it will carry us, but then its scalability in the market is not always the best. BlackBerry is a classic example of this. Technology extremely supreme. Lots of businesses, not just healthcare, started betting on the BlackBerry technology. In fact, lots of us learned a lot from BlackBerry technology. After that, it did not survive the time. So you had to step back and change course. Things like that have to be understood, and you have to cater for it. Not everything may be consumer facing or stakeholder facing. Even my doctors, nurses, and my operations team will not know some of the jugglery that happens behind scenes. But these are factors that need to be there. And how well you bring in everybody in the enterprise, the right people in the enterprise to understand this, will be how effective we are with the ability to move forward. Because for my business teams, I shouldn't look like rocket science. Then I'm not fit for purpose. So that's what happens at every level in the food chain. So that's really what we all need to do in bringing the stuff, demystifying. At the same time, the supremacy of the technology continues to exist. But we need to demystify for the role that we are talking this to.
Brilliant, Mr. Arvind. I think between you and Dr. Manish, I think some great insight has come to us, which is not only healthcare entrepreneurs, but I think people who are making technology for hospitals. I think it is not only evident very clearly here that not only are we talking about how great is the technology, which could be as good as rocket science, but its applicability and its purpose is, one of the key things. And the second is commercial viability. If you can't, if it doesn't either improve and save money internally, or it doesn't bring additional value for which you can charge to the patient, unless these 2 points are kind of proven by your technology, adoption or even filter for you to even build a use case in a hospital may not even happen. So loud and clear heard, and I think extremely well, brought out by both Dr. Manish and Mr. Arvind. Dr. Nandakumar, changing track and shifting gears a bit. We have seen that last year, as soon as the government came out with the policy that doctors can do teleconsultation, something which was restricted till March or April last year, we saw it became like a pivotal, it did play its own role in giving the doctors the ability to go ahead and do teleconsultations, because till that time, there was some liabilities. Always we spoke about liabilities, etc. at the doctor level in case they prescribe medicine in a teleconsultation environment. So there was a policy change which led to a shift, and I think all the hospitals have adopted that shift and embraced that shift, and because of that, doctors have embraced that shift. We know now that the government is bringing, India Health Stack, right? There are various components and parts to the India Health Stack. How do you think India Health Stack is it going to fundamentally shift the way hospitals operate? Is it going to bring some more convenience to the patients? Is it really going to drive any value for the hospital? Or is it just going to be another compliance factor for a lot of hospitals to comply to, but nothing is going to change on ground? How do you, react to India Health Stack initiative by the government?
I think it's a very good move on the part of the government. But how well and how much of adoption would happen is mainly dependent on how efficiently the government implements it. Now, if we have a solution that is efficient, that offers to the private healthcare players an open field to kind of participate, I don't see why its adoption should not happen in the private healthcare space. But if they create something that is not applicable to the private sector, which is much more dependent on rural government healthcare segments, then its adoption may not happen. So it remains to be seen, is what I would say. But it's exciting. In the best scenario, what happened in the banking sector in the creation of Paytm, Google Pay, and the like would translate into healthcare. As you know, and I'm sure everybody knows, through this, the patient or the person will become the owner of their healthcare records, which is a huge advantage to any physician or patient, because portability of health records offers enormous advantages to the doctor and the hospital who's seeing this patient. The ability to pay will also become more efficient. And this will affect, and I repeat, this will affect only primary healthcare to start with. I don't see it denting the secondary and tertiary healthcare segments, because the sophistication that is required to offer healthcare in those segments is entirely different. So, sum and substance, I think it's a good move. I think this will span out over some time. I believe the efficiency of the system will dictate how well it is adopted by private healthcare, and it will largely remain in the primary healthcare space.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nandakumar. Mr. Arvind, Dr. Manish, please react to this. What do you think India Health Stack is likely to bring to the hospital network or the private hospital network today?
The India Health Stack, brilliant, but please don't make it bureaucratic. Allow it to be executed. And understand Indian healthcare and Indian healthcare delivery system. The child is just born. Starting to talk about PhD in IIT Madras is too early when the child is just born. So give it time. We are a healthcare system, and give it time, but at the same time show the ambition and the aggression. So if we can do it faster, we should do it faster, but do it logically faster so that the system works. Let us not crumble in the weight of our system. The concept that India Health Stack brings, the value proposition that it brings, leaves no doubt that healthcare delivery will become really effective and will be focused on always getting quality outcomes. So it will push the system towards making quality delivery. I agree with Dr. Nandakumar in terms of how much of a dent it will make into secondary and tertiary care is to be seen, because what needs to be given there is a little more sophisticated. Building that much sophistication into this probably is overdoing it. Not to say it is not possible. It's focus first on what needs to be done so that we get the minimum of our country to a certain level. Let's not start getting into all levels of maturity. So I would say India Health Stack, brilliant. Please don't make it bureaucratic. Allow it to be executed effectively and allow it to be executed for business processes and workflow that are India centric. Let us learn from the West, but let us please not replicate the West.
I think Manish,
I think I think my esteemed colleagues have already said and expressed their views, and I completely concur. In my opinion, I think it potentially can do to India what Obamacare did to US, but we have to realize that Obamacare in US, I mean, in healthcare wise, we are poles apart as countries. Our challenges are different. Our resources are limited. And we have to realize that digitizing healthcare alone is not going to solve our problems. So while I definitely feel the national health stack is a big boost for health tech companies for sure, right? And its impact on the participants, the private healthcare players, the smaller nursing homes and all will remain to be seen because the devil lies in the detail. It's not in the intent, it's in the execution that we'll realize how much it's going to benefit Aam Aadmi. And we must realize that unless we fundamentally change or address some of the gaping holes in our system, which is lack of investment largely, we will not be able to solve those meta challenges. It's important that while we create this digital infrastructure, unless we are simultaneously investing, bigger chunks of our GDP in improving primary, secondary healthcare, then only the digital framework will work. Otherwise, you'll create records which are meaningless. So while digitization and creating that marketplace is a welcome move, I think it'll give the real result if simultaneously the fundamental basic brick and mortar challenges of the healthcare ecosystem are being addressed. And of course, taking care of privacy concerns, patient confidentiality, all that data we've seen breaches, in Facebook even today. So unless we are mindful of that, I think it'll be only something that will flatter to deceive. But I think a welcome move for sure in the system right now.
Thank you so much, Dr. Manish. Two questions which had come to us while during the registration of the panelists, and I'll just quickly answer them. One was that should the Indian healthcare market introduce a common health data exchange for sharing knowledge, improving the patient treatment outcomes? If yes, who should initiate it? So to the gentleman or the gentlewoman who asked this question, India Health Stack actually intends to do that. There's a large government initiative which has been put in place to exactly create a health data exchange where interoperability between private or public hospitals is going to increase. And if all patient data, all patient records are saved at one place, at the behest of the patient, at the request of the doctor, the data can be immediately exchanged once the patient consent is given. Another question on the same line, which was there, should the government mandate and implement strict data governing laws in managing patient data? So India Health Stack kind of is in the process of framing some of these laws, which will help protect patient privacy and patient data while even a data exchange is being put in place. So just wanted to quickly answer those questions before we move on. And to the last question to the panelists, and I'll leave it, I will not put any order to this, so whoever wants to go first. But any advice that you would want to give to our fellow entrepreneurs that if they're approaching you, what would you like them to consider when they're approaching you with any proposition, whether it is technology initiative or anything? While some of the propositions, some of these things you have covered, but it'd be great if you can just summarize or from your point of view, you would give as an advice to entrepreneurs that these are the things that you should tick off before you even approach with a proposition to me.
If I can take that first, if that's okay with Dr. Nandakumar and Mr. Arvind, I think I'll keep it simple. If your solution addresses any of the three pillars or three levers, I would say, does it improve patient experience? If it does, then, happy to host you and have that conversation. Does it help hospitals save costs, or does it help hospitals increase the business? Patient experience / quality, because quality is very nebulous sometimes. And for technologists or techpreneurs, it may be difficult to understand. But if you think from patient's experience, does it reduce the length of stay? Does it improve the in-hospital experience or post-hospital, pre-hospitalization experience? In some way, if it does it help hospitals save costs or increase business? Any of the three levers, you are my hero. And again, a shout out to all those health tech entrepreneurs there. I think we are looking forward to all of you to make a dent in this ecosystem. Today, we are a huge country of great opportunities. And I think it's bright minds like you that I think transform the healthcare ecosystem of the country. So looking forward to some great things ahead.
So I'll let Arvind go next. We'll keep it in order of age from below upwards.
To me, it's sell me a solution, don't sell me technology. And if you're selling me a solution, be very sure that it's solving a problem. You can't sell me a concept, you can't sell me a promise, you can't sell me hope. Because people have to really understand that when they come into healthcare, solutions have to work. And they have to work at scale and they have to work at cost. Please don't read the balance sheet of the organization and think that you can have a percentage of the revenue as your profit margin. It doesn't work that way. It just doesn't work that way. However smart your pricing policy is, we don't buy that. So these hard realities have to be understood. And unless you are into this for the long haul, please don't waste your time in healthcare. Healthcare is not a quick market. So if you're looking for quick solutions, you are absolutely in the wrong industry. Change your industry now, change your industry today, change it immediately. You're wasting your time in healthcare. Healthcare is for the long haul. There is no short-term gratification in healthcare. Long haul, there's plenty of gratification. So decide whether you want that before you enter this place.
Well, I have a slightly different perspective. And let me first say, become my partner. Don't sell me your product. This product will have to continue to evolve. We are still very, very infants in the way in which this area will move forward. And that's my first statement to anybody. The second is mold it to my requirements. My requirement is not the requirement of my neighbor or anybody else. It is different. So be prepared to mold it, change it to suit what I need. And I may be a doctor, a nurse, a pharmacist, a single clinic, a hospital, a chain of hospitals, or hospitals across continents. So the scope is very different. And the next point that I would say to an entrepreneur is think 20 years ahead. I have the experience of having a product that was 17 years old and suffering. The winner is somebody who can sell me something that looks 20 years ahead and says it has the efficiency to change. It has the efficiency to help me not just with diagnostic, but with procedural aspects. And it helps me by ensuring that the patient is the center and he can himself use it to help overcome many of the diseases. And that would be my appeal to an entrepreneur coming up with this product.
Thank you so much. I think a long haul and ability to think very, very far ahead is definitely something that I think everyone needs to kind of, and I think that partnership approach, if you don't have the partnership approach, you would not think long haul and you would not think, fitting to the, the audience that you're catering to. So that brings us to all the questions that, formally were there as part of the webinar discussion. What I'll do is I'll quickly start taking some of the questions We need not open it to every panelist. I'll quickly ask randomly. I'll pick one of you and pose that question to you so that we can quickly answer all of them, because we have a lot of questions already with us, as well as some which have come in the Q&A. I'll quickly start with some of the questions that came to us during the registration process. So this is for you, Dr. Nandakumar, because I feel that you would be the most appropriate person to answer this. So one person has asked, in the recent research by Aon, survey revealed that healthcare sector is among the lowest increment providing sector in this financial year. Why is this the case, especially considering that pandemic possibly brought out good revenues for hospitals? I'm not sure if that is true, but would love to understand your reaction.
Well, that is not entirely true. The initial part of the pandemic actually caused a nosedive of revenue like never ever before. Several months, every hospital was in the red. It led to several aspects in understanding the business in the presence and in the sustained presence of the pandemic. You cannot predict. You cannot say what is going to happen in the next few months. So you cannot make irrational decisions in terms of finances. And in that context, I think everyone tightened their purses to ensure that they remain afloat and they continue to provide healthcare. As, if I remember right, Manish had said, cost and understanding of costs became a vital aspect of healthcare. Now, I can tell you this. I don't believe that managers or healthcare professionals are underpaid, but I think they are paid less than counterparts in other industries. And this is factual. You have to understand that this industry is such that for its sustenance, you cannot expect to be paid huge sums of money, and you'll have to learn to either accept it or change the industry in which you work. So the answer is the pandemic has taught us some lessons in cost understanding.
Thank you, Dr. Nandakumar. The next question to you, Mr. Arvind. Do you think the future of competition would be between ecosystems and not between organizations? How do you prioritize investment strategies for the health tech ecosystem? What are the use cases being targeted, such as chronic care management, etc.?
The future of competition is not going to be between ecosystems. The future of competitions is definitely not going to be in organizations. So you're on the wrong track in terms of where the competition is. The future of competition is going to be who is able to reach to the patient most effectively and who is able to deliver the quality that the patient and the treatment plan demands. So investment will happen where we are seeing outcomes that are measurable, outcomes that are benchmarked with evidence-based protocols and pathways, and outcomes that are able to justify their whole regime with the patient and the needs of the patient. So the future is going to be with who goes patient-centric most effectively and most empathetically. Healthcare is an industry where you cannot remove the empathy there. So one who's able to bring both of those, I think that's where the future is with them. Please don't make this a tech platform stuff. That's, if you're thinking like that, you're on the wrong track. Please tell me that you wanted to see a doctor because platform 1 was more nice than platform 2. Oh my God, you need treatment. So this is not about a platform. This is not about technology.
Very well said, Mr. Arvind. Dr. Manish, over to you quickly. Could you please throw some light on adoption maturity of EMR by care providers in India? What are the pressing challenges in adoption of EMR?
In my experience, the pressing challenges are a lot of these EMR solutions are not necessarily the most sophisticated. in terms of their interface, usability, integration with the allied systems, and we've seen, we've had some, not so great success stories in the past. But now, with the recent changes, we are seeing some really good sophisticated technologies coming in on which these EMR solutions are based. And we are seeing a great deal of success. So I think the challenge is that what is the architecture or the software of those AMRs, how well we've been able to integrate those EMRs with, allied solutions of allied businesses. Third, of course, has been the cost. As both Mr. Arvind and Dr. Nandakumar alluded to, it has to be reimbursable, it has to be monetizable, and we can't load the patient with it. So the cost has been a big challenge. And somewhere, I think some of these solutions have tried to, have an upfront realization rather than having a long-term partnership, which is more, OPEX driven rather than CapEx driven. So those are some of the challenges, that we have seen in adoption. And of course, the adoption of, the bottlenecks that we've seen from the clinical fraternity, from the nursing, change management, I think largely that's also been a big challenge in the past, but not so much now. I think, honestly, the pandemic has taught us that technology is here to stay, and we must quickly adopt, quickly change, and make our organization stronger.
Thank you so much, Dr. Manish. While I have a lot more questions in the panel, I'll just take two more questions from the Q&A window that we have that we've got here. So I'll just take some of the most pertinent ones. And my apologies to some of the panelists who have put in their questions. We are running out of time, so we may not be able to take your questions. But I see this question: how do you see technology playing a role in healthcare insurance process in the hospitals, with so many stakeholders involved, such as TPAs, insurers, brokers, consumers? Do you see if a unified platform integrating these stakeholders will change the insurance management scenario in India and add value to the patients? Any one of the panelists can, choose to answer, and then we can move on to the last question that we will take today.
I think it'll add a lot of efficiency of processing and will remove individual judgmental ways of looking at insurance claims. So I think it will do a lot of good.
Thank you so much. Sure. Go ahead, Dr.
I think there are two challenges that technology should solve in the insurance sector, in the health insurance sector. I think first is the operational one, which Mr. Arvind has alluded to. How do you create a platform which is more efficient, more robust, and more responsive, and save a lot of time and save a lot of documentation as well? I think that's one challenge. The other aspect I would love for somebody to solve is that how do you solve for, that claims versus premium imbalance that exists in the healthcare, and it's probably not not as profitable as other sectors. So if some sort of a technology could optimize that balance, we'll have more participation from insurance players and probably a more larger insurance penetration in the country, which is, I think, the need of the hour.
Thank you, Dr. Manish. One question is, any good open source software for healthcare? Dr. Surendra P. Yes, FableCare is already there. So please get in touch and you can start using it. Should the, one of the data questions, I'm just picking the last question, guys. I think growth management. Yes, one of the questions which has come in even during the panelist stage, which was how much growth is expected in management consulting firms. This is tangential than our today's topic, but I think relevant to the audience that we are talking to today. How much growth is expected in a management consulting firm, which is, where did that question go once again? Which is catering to healthcare sector. Let me just see, where did that question disappear for a moment? Yeah, how much growth is expected in a management consulting firm's role in the Indian healthcare sector? Anyone, Dr. Jairam, maybe you want to take that. Let's take a stab at that question. I'm sure you would have run into management consulting firms during your stint at Columbia Asia.
Yes, I would say that it would be substantial. The reason for this is because cost has become such a factor And not every healthcare organization is as advanced or as efficient as an Apollo or a Fortis with their ability to understand their own costs and manage it. And so I see management consulting to be a big factor in this area. I would therefore think that the target hospitals for management consulting would be the medium-sized, smaller-sized hospitals with single owners. And so if I can leave one good point with these potential entrepreneurs at management consulting, don't overcharge. The health industry cannot afford you.
And if I can add to that, I think there is enough room for management consulting firms focused on the business and not focused on blue ocean strategy. Nobody's interested in 30,000 feet level yarn today, but people who understand business and actually can transform. And there is opportunity there. As Dr. Nandakumar said, many mid-tier hospitals would love that. And second area, I feel role is where consulting firms can help hospitals adopt technology faster. I think that's going to be a great growth driver in the times to come.
Sure. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, guys, those whose Q&A questions we have not been able to take, Fable team has taken a copy of these questions. We would try our best to create a summary of all the questions that have come today, and we will definitely be emailing a summary of all those questions. We will take help of our panelists to respond to them and email you to your queries. So apologies, we will not be able to take any more questions. We are nearly out of time. I would take this, a couple of moments to thank all the panelists today. I think this has been an extremely fun, engaging session. And I think collectively we have, at the recipient side from the panelist end, I think we have learned a lot in terms of how hospitals think, how they operate, how they have coped up in the last 1.5 years to see technology as one of the drivers for them, which could have been at the back burner, but now is at the forefront. We are seeing from all the panelists that, that they are seeing technology as a driver, but at the same time, it needs to solve problems of scale, of reliability, of empathy, and of fit to the need of the hour for all of the hospitals for it to become relevant for adoption in any of the institutions that you are catering to. So really, really thankful to all the panelists. Thank you so much for your time and putting out, on a weekday and taking the time out to be part of this webinar. Thank you so much. Really, really appreciate your time and the great inputs and insights that you have given to us. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Dr.
so much.
Dr. Arvind, and Dr. Manish.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.